To be honest with you guys, there aren't many stocks out there that seem exciting to me right now, but despite that, there are 3 that come to mind that still seem attractively valued and seem like particularly great pickups for your portfolio as we kick things off in the new year. But before we get to those, in case you're new to the channel, my name is Ryan, and here we strictly talk about dividend stocks and how you can invest in them to create passive income and reach financial freedom. So if you love dividend stocks and if you're on a mission to retire early, then hit that subscribe button. I'd love to stay in touch as we both continue to grow our portfolios and collect that cash flow. And also leave me a comment below and let me know which stocks you currently have your eye on. I'd be curious to hear what you think is looking good. The first one on my list as we head into January is the Hershey Company, which is a legendary company. They make all of your favorite candy, but with that, the Hershey Company is affected by the commodity market, and the price of cocoa has been on the rise lately, which cuts in the company's profits and has been bringing the share price down. Now, we actually covered the Hershey Company in last month's video because it was looking like a pretty good buy then, but in the last month, it has dropped just a little bit more. It's down 0.16% in the last 30 days, which brings them to a year-to-date loss of 17.84% and has them sitting right there just above their 52-week low. Now, taking a look at the dividend stats, starting here with the dividend yield, this is coming in at 2.6%, which is a very moderate yield. Nothing real crazy to write home about, but this is 27% above the company's 5-year average yield, so you're getting a much nicer cash flow return with the Hershey Company today than you otherwise would have been able to across these last 5 years. And scrolling down just a little bit, look at how this dividend yield has grown since May. It's gone from about 1.5% to where it's at now, 2.6%, so it's climbed over 1% just in the last 6 or 7 months. Anyway, taking a look at the rest of the dividend stats, what we're looking at here is your classic dividend growth stock. Like we already talked about, the yield's pretty moderate, 2.6%, but that payout ratio is looking very sweet, 45%, with plenty of room to contribute more to the dividend if they wanted to, and also more room to continue growing the dividend, which they've done a great job of doing at least over these last 5 years, with a dividend growth rate coming in just over 10%. Really nice growth rate, and they've been growing this dividend for the last 14 straight years. Overall, the Hershey Company is one of the most recognizable brands on the planet, and I'd be hard-pressed to believe that they're going anywhere anytime soon. So if you're looking for a stable company that offers a lot of dividend growth, I think you can find that in the Hershey Company at a very sweet price right now. No pun intended. Anyway, guys, moving on to the second stock of the day. This one is one of my favorites. We're talking about Starbucks, who seems like they've been getting it from all angles lately. They're dealing with union issues, a potentially softer holiday quarter, and a series of boycotts and protests stemming from a number of issues, all of which have had a negative impact on the share price. Just in the last month, Starbucks is down about 5%. We've seen the share price go from about $101 there all the way down to its current price of $96 per share. And then zooming out, looking at their year-to-date performance, Starbucks is down 4.78% for the year, which means that all of their losses and then some have come just in the last 30 days. Now, jumping over to the dividend stats and starting with the yield here, this is also a very moderate yield, 2.4%, which is about 19% above the company's 5-year average yield. And then looking at the overall dividend stats, this is going to be very similar to what we saw with the Hershey Company. The yield's a little bit lower, the payout ratio is a little bit higher, unfortunately, at about 61%. I would like to see that a bit lower, I'm not going to lie, but the 5-year growth rates are pretty similar. We have a 10.35% dividend growth rate, and they've been growing this dividend for the last 13 straight years. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, and as many of you guys already know, Starbucks is one of my favorite companies, and it's one of the largest positions in my portfolio, but I actually haven't added any shares since August of 2022 when it was in the mid-80s, so it's been a long time. But with this recent drop, I couldn't resist, and I decided to add a couple of shares since it's really not too far off from my cost basis. Taking a look at my Starbucks position over here on my dividend portfolio tracking spreadsheet, which you can start using for free. There is a link to download the spreadsheet in the description of the video. I currently have about 40.6 shares of Starbucks at an average cost that is now above $90 per share, coming in at $90.21 with a current share price of just over $96 per share. So if we scroll over looking at my returns, like I said, it's really not too far off from my cost basis. I'm still up about 6.4%, so nothing too crazy. And I may continue to add some more shares of Starbucks from here. We'll just have to see what the share price does. If it continues to go down, then I definitely will be swooping up more shares. But overall, I don't think now is a bad time to buy some Starbucks. But anyway, moving on to our third stock of the day. This one is going to be Johnson & Johnson, which is another one we talked about in last month's video, but I still think this is looking like a pretty great buy. And like with Starbucks, I am definitely putting my money where my mouth is with this one. Over the last few weeks, I've been going heavy into Johnson & Johnson, and throughout the month of December, I added a total of about 7 shares to my position, which leaves me sitting at $32.29 9 shares of J&J at an average cost that's still just a hair above $160. And with the current share price of $156.74, that means I am still down 2.3% on my J&J position. And so I still do have an opportunity to continue averaging down on this bad boy, but with all of these purchases lately, Johnson & Johnson has now become the largest position in my portfolio by far. Looking at how my portfolio is diversified, J&J is now about 9.8% of my overall portfolio by weighting, so it has far surpassed some of my other top dogs like Realty Income, Procter & Gamble, Starbucks, Lowe's, and Williams-Sonoma by at least a couple percentage points. But anyway, guys, taking a look at J&J's share price performance, they were actually up in the last month. In the last 30 days, they saw a gain of 3.2%. Not too shabby, but zooming out looking at their year-to-date performance, they were still down 12%, so overall J&J did not have a good year. And taking a look at the dividend stats, with this drop in share price, the yield has officially been pushed up over 3%, so I do like to see that. The payout ratio is still looking very sweet, 44.23%, and the 5-year growth rate's pretty moderate, sitting just below 6% with 61 years of dividend growth. And overall, what we're looking at here with J&J are pretty moderate dividend stats. I've referred to this before as being like the Goldilocks dividend stats. The yield, the growth rate, the payout ratio, it's not too high, it's not too low, it's just right. Overall, J&J has an incredible track record with their dividend, and I think all three of these companies would be pretty solid contenders if you're looking to make some additions to your portfolio. And having said that, in addition to these three, there are still quite a few stocks out there that I think you should keep your eye on. The first of which is Chevron. Now, Chevron's actually up in the last month. They're up about 2.7%, but if we zoom out looking at their year-to-date performance, they are still down 14.25% and are not too far off there from their 52-week low. Similarly, keep your eye on ExxonMobil. They are actually down in the last month, down about 3.9%, and looking at their year-to-date performance, they're not seeing as big of a drop as Chevron, but still a drop nonetheless. They are down 6% and are also not too far off from their 52-week low. They're basically right there. Next up, guys, keep your eye on Altria Group. They are down about 3.8% in the last month, and then zooming out looking at their year-to-date performance, they are down 11.4%, and once again, they are right there at their 52-week low. And I actually picked up a few more shares of Altria Group this last week. I added 5 shares to my position, so I'm buying a little bit of this bad boy. Now, along with Altria Group, definitely keep your eye on BTI, British American Tobacco. They had a really poor month. They were down almost 9% just in the last 30 days, and then zooming out looking at their year-to-date performance, they are the worst performer of the video. They are down 27.6% and are right there at their 52-week low. Anyway, next up is Pfizer. Pfizer is down 4.2% in the last month, and year-to-date, they are down a whopping 44%. This one has been a falling knife all throughout 2023. It'll be interesting to see when the pain will stop for Pfizer, but at any rate, keep your eye on this bad boy because it is definitely getting cheap. Moving on, keep your eye on UGI Corporation, who actually had a really solid month. They were up 9.5% in the last 30 days, but looking at their year-to-date performance, they were down a whopping 35.35%. Next up, I think Hormel Foods is another good one to keep in the back of your mind. They also had a pretty decent month. They were up 5.5%, but looking at their year-to-date performance, they're still down about 30%, so there could be a decent buying opportunity here. And along with Hormel Foods, keep your eye on General Mills. They were up 3.6% in the last 30 days, and then year-to-date, they are still down about 21.7%. And then, guys, keep your eye on Kimberly-Clark. They were pretty flat in the last month, only down about 0.5%, but looking at their year-to-date performance, they were down 11.4% and are really only a few shekels above their 52-week low, so definitely keep your eye on this one. And also, guys, be sure to keep your eye on Humana, okay? They were down 5.8% in the last month, so a pretty big drop there. Looking at their year-to-date performance, nothing too crazy, but still, you know, a decent drop. They're down 8.5%, so I think this is one to watch. Now, those are all of the stocks that I think you should be keeping your eye on, but in this next video right over here, I'm telling you about 3 more stocks that are the exact opposite. These stocks are trouble, okay, and you would absolutely regret buying them. So click right over here to find out which ones they are, and we'll see you in the next one.